Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk podcast. Back in with you guys for another show and back with three wonderful people to discuss what wasn't best of days yesterday watching the Arsenal. But there is some more interesting news to get onto a little bit later on. But we are going to suffer through the introduction of talking through the game that we had to witness on Sunday afternoon. But I'm joined by three people that I'm sure are going to cheer you guys up as best they possibly can. First of all, it's French. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me again. Looking forward to talk about this slightly positive news, but yeah, we got to get through the tough stuff first, man. So
Yes,
let's
we
go.
do for sure. Wayne, good to have you back, fella.
Yes, Tom. Thanks for bringing us on there. I think this is going to be a good one to have tonight because for the first time in a long time, I might be a little bit more positive about things, but it's on the back of a crap result. But we can deal with that if we know that there's something decent coming down the line.
Yes.
But there we go. It is what it is.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. And we will get on to the more positive stuff a little bit later on. And making his second appearance after what was a fantastic debut, it's Tomo. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, really good. We've got lots to chew on, so ready to get stuck in.
Yeah, for sure, mate. And good evening to everyone that is in the chat box this evening. I can see we got plenty of you in there tonight. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. And I'm sure we'll get to plenty of your questions. I know we've had a few sent in on Twitter and we will get to those too. But just keep up those comments in the chat. I'm reading through as many of them as feasibly possible. But let's jump straight into things. French, I'm going to go to you, mate. This City game was an interesting one because a lot of people looked at it and thought, we're just not going to get anything from this, even like weeks prior. And then that little result against West Ham gave people that little false sense of security in a way. I mean, even me was like, I'm 99% sure we're now going to lose. But there's that 1% that maybe we could have taken advantage of. But I think it's the manner of how we lost the game yesterday, which has really sort of got people's backs up. How did you evaluate what you saw?
Yeah, it was pretty tragic stuff. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of the same way. I completely kind of knew I was getting my hopes up for no reason at all, but in some way that little 9-minute spell against a failing West Ham team just made me think, yeah, we can do something. We're at home, we're Arsenal, we'll score a goal, we'll see what happens. We score goals, like that's what we tend to do. It started well. It was first 30 seconds, little Martinelli chance, and then instant like back down to earth. Okay, yeah, this is where we are. This is who we are right now. And the rest of the match, it kind of progressed into this sense of we're lost. It looked like we were drowning, and I think Man City, after scoring 3 goals, just took pity on us. Kind of left us to pass the ball around a bit and do a couple of little things, but it was all just sad. I mean, there's some moments that kind of encapsulated the whole thing, like Ozil coming off slowly and kicking his gloves, and Chambers being targeted over and over again, just not being able to do anything about it. Kolasinac ducking for the ball for the first goal, that minute 30. I think all those little moments just kind of show the lack of strong mentality, the lack of leadership, the lack of quality that we have at the moment. And it's just it's a sad situation. And I think my mates aren't even really bantering me too much about it. People are just like, this is Arsenal right now. Like we got our hopes up for no reason, and yeah, we got brought back down to earth.
Yeah, we really, really did. I mean, it looked so bright the first minute there was on the pitch. I mean, Martinelli had that chance at the other end, and then we just sort of let them run up the other end, and Kevin De Bruyne does what Kevin De Bruyne does, and all of a sudden we're 1-0 down, and all of a sudden we're 2-0 down, Wayne. I mean, how much can we, because the fans were quite supportive of Freddie towards the end of the game, how much do you sort of look at it and say that, yes, it's Man City, we're going to really struggle to sort of get something out of this game, but also with what we got available to us, we haven't really got any coaching staff bar Freddie. We've had to promote Per Mertesacker. There's the team doctor doing some of the warm-ups on the pitch before the games. It's a bit of a mess. How do you sort of see us as a team and the preparation that's going into these games? Is that really the main issue, or does it go beyond that?
Goes way beyond that, but it is a major issue. As you're talking about Premier League football match here, Tom. This isn't Sunday League stuff. Like, this is top level. You can imagine the amount of effort and preparation City put into every single match. We don't have the actual. We actually don't have the personnel. This is staggering that we are in this position, that we don't have the actual personnel to even do a bit of video analysis on Manchester City. We're using the team doctor to do the warm up on the middle of the pitch. Per Mertesacker is in the middle of signing contracts for 9, 10, 11-year-old kids while he's taking training sessions and putting cones out for the senior team. This is the Premiership. This is the Premier League. It's Arsenal Football Club here. One of the best, one of the biggest, 13 times champions, one of Europe's elite clubs, and that's what we've been reduced to, like, you know. So there's obviously reasons for that. We obviously let go of the manager, but like we had to do that, and then at the same time, we're in the process of putting somebody new in. But like the crowd, in my opinion, it was kind of like. Do you ever see that Simpsons meme where like it's the kids are, stop it, he's already dead, they're pointing at him on the ground? Remember that? Did you ever see that meme? That's what I feel like the crowd are looking at when they're looking at that football team on the pitch. They're just like, stop it, he's already dead. Because that's what it feels like with that football team. They're just giving up being angry, just giving up being just like, okay, what's next? We're at the bottom of the pit here. So we're, you know, just give us another 3-0 defeat. Give us a 6-0 defeat. Give us whatever you got. We can take it. We're at the bottom here. We can't sink any lower. So I don't think there's a result out there that we can actually. If we got beaten 5-0 tomorrow by Spurs, I don't think people would even be as angry. They wouldn't be as angry as they were 2-3 years ago. You know, the kind of way. I just think we're at the bottom of the actual pit, and it reflects in the mood of the crowd. It reflects in the crowd, the attendance. It just kind of, you can just sense that vibe. It's just people kind of. They don't really care anymore. You know, the kind of way they're just like, right, well, yeah, we know where we're at. We're shite. Now, what's next, lads? Come on, what have we got coming up here? I mean, we produced 6 shots on target. 6 shots in total. Like, that's the lowest in 11 years for Arsenal. And we've played City. We've now got beaten 8 times in a row or something off Manchester City. Man United beat City last week, like. Man United, we've been bantering them off all season so far for being absolutely trash, and City came here to away from home to our place and absolutely steamrolled us in first gear. Like that, we are at the bottom of the sandpit here. We were in quicksand under Unai Emery, and now we're drowning in it, like, and now we need something to just pull us out of it. So, please God, now we get a decent bit of news, because I mean. You cannot blame Freddie Ljungberg for the mess that he's been given. He's been given no resources. So all we've got is Freddie Ljungberg picking a team and hoping that we do something. But it's just not on him. It's on people above him. And it is up to them now to make sure that we start the process of getting out of it. Because, my Jesus, it is a fucking mess.
It is. It's the perfect situation, the perfect word to describe it. You can't really look around any other team in the Premier League and seeing them, yes, make a decision, as in moving the coach on, but letting this situation fester for so long. You've seen Ferguson come in at Everton, and let's be honest, he's got 3 points off Chelsea. He's taken a point off Manchester United, or 2 points off them, and he's gained 1 point from them. How that situation... You can't tell me
that Everton team is better than our team on paper.
No,
you know
of course it's not.
So there must be something else there, Tom. You know,
and it is a mental thing. And Tomo, I think that leads us on quite nicely to the next question. That I did the Raw Reaction show straight after the Man City game, and I didn't talk about Ljungberg. I didn't talk about the sort of hangover from Emery. I didn't even talk about the Cronkies. I spoke about the players, and I spoke about the attitude of the players and what we saw from them yesterday. Because let's be honest, Ljungberg has a lot of faith in the youth players because he has a lot of knowledge of them from coaching them in under 23s. But we saw likes of Ozil, Aubameyang, Socrates. I mean, he left David Luiz on the bench, which says quite a lot. These more experienced heads are not showing an example to these younger guys. And in fact, it got to the point where he had to take off our £350,000 per week player and bring on a youngster for his Premier League debut to give us more energy. How systematic is that problem running through Arsenal at the moment?
Yeah, it's. I guess it's symptomatic of what we've been seeing like over the years, because I'm pretty sure, like, you know, this isn't a new thing for us. We've also seen in the past where, you know, we've always needed the youngsters to come in and, you know, save us, whether it be in the cup competitions or some European League games. And we always see when we kind of, you know, play without the handbrake, that when the young players seem to play, they play with a certain kind of effervescence. And I think that speaks more to the culture of the club. That I think the senior players are not held accountable. So, that kind of malaise which just sets throughout the team is really being, kind of is carried out by the senior players. And so, we're League. We don't get Champions League, we get Europa League. In any organization, if you don't meet your targets, somebody's heads have to roll. Somebody has to go, right? So it kind of sets a tone, like this is not acceptable. But with Arsenal, all the players that we wanted to get rid of, who we all perceive as not performing, be it the senior players, nobody's heads roll. So it's, for me, quite normal now, year after year, that we keep seeing the same thing, and the senior players kind of chilling, taking a step back, and look at the effort that Martinelli put into the game. Like, how is it an 18-year-old seems to have more sprints, more effort, more closing down and pressing than any other player on the pitch?
Do you know, I don't want to say alongside that, and I just think it's a player who I've never really sent for, never came after, but I do think that the 2019 version of Mesut Ozil is such a reflection on the entire. It's almost like his attitude, the way he plays football, is gone viral throughout the team, and it's like everybody's slow, everybody's lethargic, everybody seems to just saunter around now because he's such a senior figure at the club now. He was given the captain's armband and that, all this type of stuff. I think that's reflected badly on the team since he's become a more senior player, and it's bore out in the result and in the performance, because he's answerable to nobody in that regard, and he just seems to produce the same kind of performances, and other players out there seem to be producing similar kind of, attitudinal kind of, there's not like Martinelli is a different kind of, he's just his own kind of a guy, but I just see Lacazette being a bit lazy, and Aubameyang is even quite lazy, but he gets goals, so you have to forgive him a little bit of that, but I just don't see any accountability for players making mistakes. Nobody really. And Mesut Ozil kind of, in my opinion, the 2019 version of Mesut Ozil is a reflection on the way the team has kind of gone into that kind of lazy mode, because we just don't seem to have it. And the likes of Ozil is not answerable to anybody. And then if he's not answerable to anybody, who's answerable to anybody then, throughout the team? That's where it goes. The buck stops with nobody. There's been nobody to question, Ozil questioning the coach and talking behind his back, and a lot of that stuff going on. I just don't think. I think that's where it's a good point, actually, because I just think that that's the way the squad has gone. And I think he's been a big part of that, and it's sad to see. And I don't like having to say it, but I feel that that's the way the squad have gone with him being a senior player on the side.
I think a narrative that we haven't really thought about too much as well since Emery's left is there was a constant war, like this dichotomy of Ozil versus Emery. So what you're saying there, Wayne, could it, I'm just conspiracy theory, could it be that Emery completely saw this kind of this kind of attitude from Ozil as a senior player, had this war with him that he obviously didn't end up winning, and eventually he's the one who's had role. And what we're thinking is, if it was Ozil versus Emery, then Ozil's won. What are you giving us, Ozil? And what he's given us is a performance that's getting him subbed off for an 18-year-old, or however the SR is.
But you know what Ozil does give us? Some beautiful tweets now and again.
And that's all you need from an Arsenal player these days. Just a strong social media presence.
His social media game is strong. I've got to give it to him.
I'm interested to actually discuss, and I don't mean to go off topic, but it's slightly controversial, but the message that he put out on Twitter, there's been a lot of backlash from that. Obviously, what's going on in China is horrific. If what we know is going on is true, and it is absolutely horrific to know that's going on. But it's very interesting, and I had to agree with a lot of people when they said that the club distanced themselves from Ozil's tweet. Yet when Hector Bellerin, and this is completely unbiased, whatever your political view is in the UK, but when Bellerin tweeted out F Boris, the club didn't say a thing. Am I reading too much into that, or is there some substance to that?
What I might just say on that is that the kind of free speech in China is very different to how it is in the UK. Ozil, I think, has been wiped from all of China's internet as a direct result. I don't think Hector Bellerin is going to be wiped from the English internet. So just if I was thinking from a immoral business point of view, I could see the difference in that. But in terms of obviously morally speaking, I completely see what you're saying. I think it's a hypocritical thing when to say we don't get involved in politics and then to choose to get involved in something like racism, not necessarily doing the most about it, but politically being involved in it to show that we are, on the right kind of page here. And it's business. It's like very immoral. And yeah, I mean, I think it kind of shows again where we are as a club. I think the Sun, for example, the Liverpool and the Sun kind of situation shows that you can have some morals as a club and choose to turn down, aspects of business in favor of, morals and principles. But that's obviously not what we're choosing to do. So yeah.
No,
China is a different animal, though. China is a different animal. I think they strike the fear of God into, like, if what we're led to, if that stuff is really going on in China, which I'm not saying I have no doubt it is, but just if it is going on over in China, you can see why people don't bother going. Like the US, nobody steps in, because I mean the Chinese are just different gravy over there. They are a law unto themselves, and I think I don't know if the club were right in distancing themselves. They should have just said nothing, and then there would have been nothing to say.
Yes, probably
that would have been by coming out and actually just distancing themselves. I mean, I'm bringing a bit more heat onto the guy as well, But if he has his own point of view on it, I mean, fair enough. That's his own point of view. He's a Muslim, so he can have his point of view on things. But the club should have said nothing, really. To be honest with you.
Of course, and I think that it's important that people have free speech, especially on certain aspects. But the problem with free speech is that there is always going to be a consequence to things that you do say, and whether or not you agree with it or not, and that's down to your own personal opinion, is a different matter. But it rubbed me the wrong way, the way that the club can pick and choose when they sort of distance themselves, and I think that needed. I mean, Arsenal's social media is never the best. I mean, we know that.
I think they want Mesut out anyway, and I think that's there was a hidden meaning behind that.
So I can't see him being at the club for too much longer, and I know that will rub a lot of people up who really like the German a long way. And I've gone on record many times admitting that this guy has got amazing quality on a football pitch, but it's just the consistency and the application in the times that we need it. But I don't want to linger on about Mesut Ozil too much. We could go on all day about how he was kicking the gloves as he came off the pitch, but sort of when you look at Arsenal now, you can't look at them too much without looking ahead. And without looking ahead, you then can't not think about the news that is breaking at the moment. So we've spent just over 15 minutes or so talking about City, and it's not really a game I want to linger on too much about. But there is an easy segue, because the man that was sitting on the opposite dugout to us, which is a very strange concept to think about, is now the man which looks the most likely to take over. Tom, I'm going to start with you on this, mate. I want to cover all the bases. I want to talk about Ancelotti in a bit and how he's being linked to the Everton move. I want to talk about the fan reaction, which we do a lot on here. But I just want to get your blunt and raw reaction to the news that Arteta is most likely going to turn out the coach or head coach of Arsenal. How do you feel about that appointment?
Look, I think the most exciting thing about Arteta is that he is quite a spiky character. I think we've heard, like, behind the scenes that he obviously was the consummate professional, but he didn't necessarily get on with everyone. So he's not like a Mr. Nice Guy necessarily. And I think you see that edginess that Pep has. Obviously, maybe he boils over a little bit too much sometimes, but I do like Arteta in the sense that he has edge. And I think Arsenal desperately needs some edge. I don't think he'll be afraid to ruffle a few feathers and to man, call out players. And I think that's desperately what's needed. I get, Freddie coming in and putting an arm around these guys and everything. But as a recent young professional, he's 37 years old. He knows that these guys can do more. And I think there's a generational shift in terms of management from the 90s, 2000s, and now. Now it's all about management and motivating young millionaires, right? You've got guys who are on hundreds of thousands of pounds a week at the age of 20, 21, 22. So, motivating them is really what's key, more than coaching them. You've got to make these guys run through walls. And I think that the new crop of young, successful managers like Klopp, Pochettino, Pep, they get what it is to be a young guy, to be talented, but they have enough charisma and enough, charm and kind of aggression about them that they can rally these troops behind them. So when they walk into the room, when they talk, guys listen. And I kind of felt that under Arsene Wenger, and even more so after, with Emery, you can imagine it's like a school classroom kind of thing, with the old teacher. And, these guys are probably sniggering and laughing behind them when he turns around. And, they kind of lost respect for them, for the manager. We saw it with Wenger when they just stopped playing for him. And we saw it with Emery. They just stopped playing for him. And now, Freddie's obviously struggling to get these players motivated and, to run again and to sprint and to run through walls. Because we know our guys are talented. But talent isn't enough. You've got to give 110% to win games in the Premiership. So I do think you need a different class of manager these days than the old days. And hopefully Arteta can bring that.
When there's always that link to that former player, the Vieira link really made me sort of wince a bit because I've just seen what he's done in France and it hasn't really kicked off. He hasn't really been able to do that. The difference with Arteta, French, is that he's more of an unknown. He's like when Arsene Wenger was linked in the first place. We came from Japan. Not many people knew too much about him. But that also brings an element of uncertainty in itself because he's had no experience as being the head coach of any team. He's coming to Arsenal after no first team experience whatsoever. How much of a concern is that fact for you?
I mean, it's the biggest concern. There's no getting around that. That's like the elephant in the room. It's the biggest thing people can say as a sort of doubt as to why he should come. For me personally, I'm at the point where I'm kind of happy to take that risk, that kind of gamble on him. I think we've lost a lot in terms of kind of identity very recently. I think, like, just thinking about the way we've been performing for a while, pretty much since the end of last season, there's been a sense of we don't know what to do, and occasionally one of our good players just scores a goal for us. Pretty much Aubameyang, and then Leno saves us a little bit. I feel like the loss of Aaron Ramsey was really kind of significant to the way that we fought on the pitch and just the way that we played. And I think maybe even over the summer, the loss of people like Koscielny and Cech just lost a certain amount of definitely leadership, but also a certain amount of identity and that kind of weird intangible thing that people are calling Arsenal DNA. And I think that if you're looking for that, if you're looking for an identity, Arsenal DNA is Arsenal DNA. That's what people are talking about, because when we talk about Arsenal DNA, we think about attacking football and we think about, free flowing. We think about having that kind of protagonist kind of idea, rather than, what we were doing previously in terms of low block, score a goal and 1-0 to the Arsenal. So I feel like if that's what we're going for, if that's what if we have a philosophy that's, well, if we're missing a philosophy, if we're missing our identity, I think an Arteta is definitely someone who can bring that, who has a feeling of belonging at Arsenal as well as having an attacking philosophy. So there's a lot of positives around it for me, and I think it's something that's unknown. I think that also makes it something that's kind of exciting. We're at the point in the season now where we can kind of take a risk on an unknown. I think there's nothing really to play for except for a cup competition. That's one on 2 games, which you never know what's going to happen. We had the Europa League professional who couldn't win that for us, so there's no guarantee anyone can do that. So I think, why not go for him? The very worst that happens, I don't really see relegation as a possibility, even though people are talking about it. I think the very worst that happens is we finish low in the table, below 10th, and then Arteta probably doesn't get hopefully gets a backing in summer. But if it's really horrendously bad, then we'll probably just get rid of him and find something else in summer. I think, why not? We're in a position. What do we really have to lose this season? What do people think we've got to play for, and who do they think is really going to come in to deliver that? People know I want to get Pochettino in, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's waiting until summer, and I don't know that we can do that. It's a risk that I'm happy to take.
Fair enough. Wayne, we had a question come in on Twitter from Gerbs, and he said, question regardless of what we think of the appointment, do we think Arteta can command the respect of the players?
Yeah, I want to be a little bit more positive on this, Tom, but I'll explain why, right? I was kind of like, obviously there's been a lot of rumours about plenty of names being bandied about the last week, 2 weeks. The Vieira one I'll just touch on briefly, right? with the attitudes and the egos in that Arsenal dressing room right now, I do not think that Vieira, even a Patrick Vieira, would have worked because of how he performed in his own managerial career. He's really done nothing of note, and he hasn't really lit the world up. And I don't think he would have commanded the respect. Even Patrick Vieira, I know it seems absurd, but I just don't think that he would have commanded the respect from it. I'm going to say straight off Ozil, you know, who this is where kind of I think the problems lie. With Arteta, right? Yes, he's coming in as an unknown. We have to take that fact on its own. But the second point is that he's also coming from the champions, a top club where he's got a brilliant reputation. And I think the fact that he's coming from Manchester City, a team that only yesterday annihilated us at our home ground. So this guy, he may command a little bit more respect as a result of that, because he's coming from a top club, and he does have a good reputation coming from there. The whispers coming out of there, the players are not stupid. They would have seen them. They would have read the pieces in the articles in the paper about how the background it's Arteta doing the tactical work and this, that, and the other. They're not blind. They'd see all that. And I from a personal point of view, I've had time to digest this, and in my opinion, I do believe that this guy is probably going to be one of the top coaches in world football over the next decade. I think from a guy who's now learned and honed his managerial skills. He's taken the best parts of Wenger, probably the best parts from Guardiola, who in turn took the best parts of Johan Cruyff as well. So like we're getting a beautifully thoroughbred, pedigreed manager who just doesn't have the reputation. He doesn't have the CV quite yet. But would we all be kicking ourselves if he went to Everton and got them top four next year? You know what I mean? We're saying, oh, balls, we missed out on this guy. He's generational. I actually think this guy could be really, really good, Tom. And I think if he can just do the simple things straight away, as in get us structured on the football pitch, that's all. We're just rudderless. We're directionless. If this guy, I could probably tell you for a fact that this guy knows how to structure a team. Without this guy not even having managed the game, I could tell you that he's going to come in and put a good structure on this team, and he'll make us a little bit more compact, bit harder to beat. Even with the shit players we have, we still might be just a little bit better, and then we can build from that. And I do think that he will be a little bit more forceful with the board to say, I want a specific type of player, I want this guy, that guy. I do think he has the personality for that. So I do think that we're going in the right direction in terms of a coach who's going to put a structure on this team, because by and large, we have a good team on paper. We just need somebody who's going to put us in the right direction. And maybe, just maybe, this guy, with the knowledge that he's accumulated in the latter stages of his career and in the last 2 years, 3 years with City, whatever it's been, he might just be a great starting point for us to start putting ourselves in the right direction on the pitch. And then also, we can build from there.
I think it's a brave choice as well. And that's something we've not really been recently, is brave. So I really agree with what you're saying. And hopefully, it's a start of a change, of a shift of, what we're trying to do at Arsenal. I basically call it the CCR, right? But we probably should call it CPR, because that's how desperate we are. I think it's a three-pronged approach. I look at it as culture, coaching, and recruitment. And I think Arteta is the coaching part, right? We know he understands the game through the Barcelona system, Spanish, great player, great captain. He's captain at he had a good career at PSG, great at Everton. Even though his legs had slightly gone at Arsenal, he still was super professional. So we know he understands the game. He reads the game.
He was taking the training sessions at the end of his career with Arsenal. Wenger was giving him the training sessions. That's how well got he was with the likes of Wenger, and that's why Guardiola brought him in. But
my biggest hope is that he doesn't do an Emery and promise them the world that he can turn around this group of players, right? We know he can coach. We know he can look at the tactics. We know he's going to do that well. But we've got to change the culture of the club, right? We need directors and owners to start showing a bit more interest and to have accountability. Obviously, we talked about getting in some ex-players, onto the board, more around the club to kind of just make these boys understand a little bit more about Arsenal culture, but also English Premier League culture. And the third part is recruitment. And as much as, I see a lot of fans online always talking about, who we can sign, who are we going to sign. For me, I've always been much more concerned with who we sold or who we can get rid of. And, we were happy with some of the recruitment that we did this summer because I think we were all just looking who's come in, but we didn't really look at who went out. And just as Frenchie was mentioning earlier, we lost some really big names in the summer who definitely had an impact in the dressing room, who definitely were professional, hundreds and hundreds of games of Premiership experience between them. We lost that. But there are some really bad, there's a lot of guys that we know we've got to get rid of. We know, from centre back and centre midfield, attacking midfield, they're guys who need to go because you see they're not really part of, they don't get it, or they're not really interested. So I hope that Arteta can come in if he is the guy, and we do support him. And he is brave enough to make the change and not make that mistake with Emery, saying, don't worry, I can coach these guys. I'll turn it all around. Here's a huge dossier about how I can make, Ainsley Maitland-Niles into the new Cafu and, Guendouzi into the next Pirlo or whatever. We need a guy to come in and say, right, I want rid of these guys. And I'm not an advocate for just bringing out a checkbook and spending 200-400 million pounds. It's not realistic. But as you can see, with Leicester, it's with a couple of good signings, you can quickly turn around, and that's what I'm hoping we can do.
Yeah.
Well, see, my biggest fear, sorry, with what could possibly happen is what you mentioned there. I hope we do support him. I think there is a little bit of arrogance around like what people are saying at the moment with regards to, we should be getting this manager or that manager. Like, I know we've all got our dream managers, and that's fine. As fans, we're allowed to have our dream managers, and we want to get this person. But we also have to be somewhat understanding of the position that we're actually in, and people who don't necessarily want to come here, especially in the middle of a season, in the position that we're in. But what I'm worried about is that because Arteta is, perceived by some people not in the same way as we see someone like Ljungberg, for example. He wasn't with us through the best of our time as a club, and so people might just not like, if we don't do well in the first few games, how much are people going to stand behind him? How much, that's the one thing I'm worried about. And that's the one, the one kind of concern I have in terms of the unknown factor, because we hear about when Pep was not allowed to come down and he was banned for however many matches. And apparently Arteta was described as like a rabbit in headlights almost at some points on the bench when things weren't going his way. And so a new manager, the kind of position that we're in, and then if the fans don't stand behind him when things get really bad, that's one thing that will kind of worry me. Just to play devil's advocate and put
I completely get that side of things, and I think it is a completely valid point of view. The difference, I think, is obviously Man City, when that situation where you were sort of thrust into the limelight, there was times where City didn't look too great during that period anyway, and maybe there is a side that it could have been a coincidence, but at the same time, maybe just not having someone like Pep Guardiola, losing that influence on the touchline, losing that influence is more substantial than people give credit for. I think sometimes losing the presence of the manager. You look at Atletico sometimes when Diego Simeone gets a ban, they don't look like the same side. And whether or not his number 2 comes up or not, I don't think you would get the same. With Arteta now, he's a lot more experienced than he was back then. He's a lot more time under Pep Guardiola's wing. And from doing a bit of research, because when we were linked to him last year, there were a couple of articles about how integral he's been in terms of developing Sane and Sterling as wingers. And maybe coming in, he's got Martinelli and Pepe to work with. He could do wonders for those two. My biggest issue, Wayne, is when we look at what he will do for the defence. Now, I personally don't know whether, or don't think that if you had Diego Simeone, if you had Allegri, if you had some of the best defensive coaches in the world football, I don't think they'd be able to get much more out of the back four that we have right now in a defensive sense. So my question to you is, do you think ultimately Arteta will get the backing to do what is needed, which is to sign and put money into that defence to give him the platform that he needs to succeed?
I'm not too sure he's going to get it in January, but I know that he has got Saliba to come in the summertime. And if we can pick up another centre half, because I do think that Callum Chambers is just so far off the pace that he's not up to Arsenal's foot standard. I know people have this fascination with him, but I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. He's clumsy, he's slow. He might throw in one good game and people jump on the bandwagon. He throw in 10 shockers. I just don't understand it. I just don't. He reminds me of somebody like Senderos. That's the level I think Callum Chambers is at. And it's somebody that you need to get rid of that type of level, and you need to upgrade, and you need to upgrade fast. Whether I actually do think that they will back him in the market, but they'll back him with shrewd signings. Tom, you know what I mean? They will sign somebody, but like Saliba, he's a clever. So that was a shrewd signing because it was done a year in advance, and we know he's going to be a really good player. He does look absolutely sensational, to be fair. So we've been a little bit unlucky with this year so far, even with regards to injuries to Bellerin and Tierney. I think we can more or less just write off between January and the end of the season, more or less write off the season. If we do finish somewhere in and around 5th or 6th, that'll be our level for the time being. And then the summer we'll be able to, Saliba will come in. If we can pick up another signing and you know, a good centre half, an experienced centre half, somebody in and around that late 20s, maybe even early 30s, who's just a bit of class, because the younger players have to have somebody that they can look up to and say, there's a leader, there's an experienced guy. Look at the way he does things. If they haven't got that at a team, if that doesn't exist at a team, I mean, look at the difference with City this year losing Vincent Kompany. It's ridiculous, like. They're not the same side at all.
I think Laporte's probably the biggest miss rather than Kompany.
Laporte is the biggest miss on the football pitch, Tom, 100%. But I mean, in the actual side itself, Vincent Kompany leaving is ridiculous. Like, I mean, Vincent Kompany's father's the mayor of Belgium, whatever he's
the mayor of Belgium.
Like,
yeah.
No, you know what I mean. Like, he's a politician. Vincent Kompany was supposed to go into politics. He decided to go into management with Anderlecht, and he brought Craig Bellamy straight over and all. So it just. This guy is a born leader, and there's a reason why City were very successful with him with the captain's armband on. You know, he was part of that winning mentality, but he's also a very experienced player that younger players could come in and look up to and you know, work hard to gain their respect. If we don't have that at the team, we need somebody in there, maybe somebody a little bit established, and I'd like to see that this summer. Just maybe one established centre half to come in alongside Saliba and have Bellerin and Tierney there. And if we could do that and then plug the gaps that Arteta thinks that we need to plug, slowly but surely, I actually do think that they will back him. Maybe I'm being naive there, but I do think that there's no choice but to back him. They can't throw this guy under the bus and not back him, you know? Not with that side. And then I think there's a few players that are going to go this summer. Ozil is gone. He could be gone in January. I think Lacazette could definitely go. I also think Aubameyang could go. And it depends what way they want to structure the team and what type of side he wants to build. But we could be looking at wholesale changes next year. But if we can build from the defence and get a structure in there, Tom, it's a great starting point from anywhere then, you know. But I do think they will back him.
Tomo, thanks for the donation, Julian Nagelsmann, who was a lot of people's pick for this summer. He says that our fans are acting like we're Real Madrid. And a lot of the fan opinion, Tom, in the chat box has been that he's effectively a yes man. He's someone that the board can control, someone that will just do what Kroenke wants, do what Stan and Raul and Edu and those guys want. Do you think that Arteta's got enough front about him to come in and make some bold decisions to get rid of the players that need to get rid of and to sign the players that ultimately, if he's been given the resources, that can change the team? Do you think he's got enough front to be able to do that?
I think he has. I mean, you know, I thought he was a good captain. I thought he always held himself well. I thought he was a great player at Everton. He knows the league inside out. Yes, he's Spanish, but, you know, he was in the Premiership for several years. So he gets it. He absolutely gets it. And I'm sure, you know, coming from, you know, it's a big, although, yes, it's a great opportunity for anyone to come into Arsenal. Also, it's a big step up for him. You know, it could make or break his managerial career. So I'm sure, you know, he's a man enough or strong enough to actually make a few demands of his own about how he wants to build a team. And I think that was Emery's failing. That I think Emery is probably a better coach than we saw, but ultimately, he needs a team in his image, and he didn't get it. And obviously, we lost a bit of faith in him. We didn't back him with the players that he wanted. Hopefully, we've learned from our mistakes. Arteta's seen where we really are, and he can go out and just say it how it is. For me, I'm just crying out for change. If it been what I think was really disappointing post Wenger was that when we didn't pick a new the right manager, we didn't really kind of find a style or system of football that we want to play. So we basically just lost a whole year of development of young players or a new system. And we've again kind of lost half of this season with the development of young players and a new system. So yes, we know it can take 2 to 3 years to build a new team, but we've just lost 18 months. We're going sideways and backwards. So I'm hoping Arteta can come in with a new system. And we're not Man City, but we saw when Pep came in, he had a style that he wanted to play. Clichy and Sanya weren't up to that. He got rid of them, right? He got in the fullbacks that he needed, and then they went on to win the league. So we need that kind of cutthroat nature that if these guys don't fit the system, we just got to get rid. And I'm so tired of all these appeasing Arsenal fans who seem to want to keep Mesut Ozil happy and keep some of Xhaka happy.
Bin, straight in the bin, 2 of them.
And they're more concerned about keeping these guys happy than us actually winning stuff. And I don't see how the fans can't see the correlation of when, Xhaka and Mustafi coming into the team and us sliding into Europa and staying there. We just need to, not be as, clingy and emotional and attached to these players. They come and they go. It's a football club, So hopefully Arteta gets that. I think being around Pep Guardiola and being around that whole set up at City, which is basically designed to win trophies, right? I can't imagine he can be there for 2-3 years, come to Arsenal and just, take a back seat and just be, a kind of, laid back, laissez-faire manager. I just don't see it personally. I'm being optimistic, and I think he's going to push for change.
What really frustrates me, and you hit the nail on the head when we talked about the fans, because I know a lot of people that are watching the show right now are not particularly excited about this Arteta signing. Now, this is all about opinions, and that's the reason we do the show, is so people can get their opinions, and it's great when we have debates on it. But for me, when you think about Arteta, we're finally getting a bit of identity back at the club again. We're finally getting someone that knows the Premier League as well. As you say, Tom, who's had some really, really good experiences under Pep Guardiola, knows what it's like to build a successful side and a winning mentality at a team, and has also been able to sit and watch for a couple of years now Arsenal's decline and look at their deficiencies, look at what's going wrong, and maybe is in a very, very good position because he has a vested interest in the club and he would have noticed these things. And he will identify those issues and be able to turn them around. Now, my biggest problem, French, is that I'm really concerned that if things don't happen immediately, and by the way, I don't expect them to happen immediately. In fact, I don't expect us to improve that much, even with Arteta coming in until the end of this season. For me, the season in terms of the league is probably a bit of a write-off already. I don't expect to see too much change. But are you confident that he will be allowed the time on two fronts, by the hierarchy and the fan base, to gradually stamp his authority, stamp his style, and get what he needs to get this club to the place that he wants it to be at?
He has to have made demands. You have to think he's made some demands if he's going to agree to come into this training right now in the middle of the season, just before January. It would be insane to think that he hasn't asked for some support, whether that be in summer or sooner, and some backing in terms of getting rid of who he wants to get rid of. Because what you said is true. I'm sure he has identified things over the years, as all people who paid attention to Arsenal have from the outside, and so. Yeah, I think he'll be given the time by the hierarchy, because I think they are kind of, they've made one wrong decision already, and you saw how much time they were willing to give there. and how little they had planned for something after him because they wanted him to succeed so much. And so I think Arteta will be given even more time, because I think with this one, it has to be described as an ongoing process, an ongoing project, and something that we're going to have to be in for the mid to long term rather than anything short term. The expectations are going to have to be pretty low, certainly for for this season. We can't expect anything, really. I think we need to see some sort of changes, but what are those going to be? Was that going to be personnel, people going in January? Is that going to be like just an attitude change? I mean, it's really hard to quantify the things that we need because so much of it is to do with direction and philosophy, and it's a bit more macro than just individual talent or players. So I think the hierarchy will give him time because they really have to, because if they get 2 wrong in a row, then a lot of focus is going to be coming onto Raul and Vinay and Edu even, and of course the Kroenkes especially. So I think they have to give him time. With the fan base, as I mentioned, I'm not really so sure. I think a lot of people will, just because once he becomes Arsenal manager, obviously, he's got a connection with the club. People are going to be sympathetic to that to a degree. But someone did mention in the group chat that he doesn't have any pennies in the bank with Arsenal. With the Arsenal, I don't know if he said fans or players, but as you mentioned, there were some things about him not necessarily being even liked by all the players at the club. And certainly with the fan base, there's an attitude amongst a lot of people that he's not a true Arsenal legend, in the sense that he didn't win the Premier League or win.
But to be honest, I don't see that as a bad thing.
No, neither do I. So
yeah, I'd personally don't either, but my point is that
if he's liked, they're going to be like Pally. It's not going to have that authority. Like he's not going to be looked upon as someone who can make big decisions. If you're friendly with everyone, those tough decisions aren't going to be made anywhere near as easily. So, in my view, good. I'm glad that people don't like him. That will make it much easier for him to make those tough choices.
I think I was going to mention something, because I think the thing with Arteta is like, if he is that spiky kind of competitive character, I think he's going to shake things up. And going back to the point that you made about the fans, I think we've actually got a great fan base. I know we've got a few trolls and, a few people, who kind of make the environment toxic. But I generally think Arsenal fans are pretty smart. And I think we just want someone to talk to us. I think Arsenal could easily buy into a youth project, into a possession, kind of pressing, attacking kind of football. And I think Arsenal fans will be patient enough to give a new manager a chance if we see change. I don't think if we keep picking the same players or having a third manager or even a fourth manager try and make Mesut Ozil the main man and, seeing the same thing again. And I think what really killed us last night in the games is just that general sense of apathy, where it's kind of like we've seen it all before. There's nothing to get excited about, and that kills a club more than anything. That when we're that sense of we're acquiescing to defeat in all the games. There's apathy around the ground. No one's really bothered anymore. I think Arsenal fans would buy into a youth project, to an aggressive, attacking, fast-running, fast-pressing game. And yes, we know it's going to take time. I don't think the fans will turn if we truly see change. But that's got to come with a change of personnel. I think Arsenal have been really good.
Hilarious seeing Mesut Ozil in a fast-pressing game.
But that's the thing. I mean, I've got all the time in the world for our young players. Like, we see Saka, Emil Smith-Rowe. They've definitely got something. Martinelli has definitely got something. I'm not saying all of them are going to make it, but I think at least 2 or 3 of them are going to make it. And as a fan, I'm more than happy to give these guys time, as long as there's the right approach and they're running their socks off. And at the end of the match, they're on the ground like panting, and they've given it their all, even if we lose. I don't think there are a lot of Arsenal fans who do remember the old days, pre-Wenger. So, it doesn't have to be champagne football tomorrow, but if we do see a change and we do see some effort, I think we'll support the players and the manager, the new coach.
Yeah, I hope we get the back. I hope they get the backing of both the fans and of obviously the hierarchy as well. Because if we don't get both, there's going to be huge issues. The end of the game against City gave me hope because I thought that there was support for Freddie at the end of that game, and I think that was definitely positive. The issue was the amount of people that left at half time was a big problem. But hopefully, with change and maybe what will really help Arteta is if they can pick up a couple of early results and see some change. That will really help. In my opinion, I don't think we'll see an initial impact no matter who came in. But fingers crossed something will happen. Jason said Pep's first senior management role was Barca, I think, and look what he has achieved to date. So why can't Arteta, do this? We just don't know. And I think that is a nice way to sort of round things off to say that we just simply don't know with Arteta what we are going to get. We have an idea and we can look at the successes that he's had at Manchester City and think that, well, maybe, as Wayne said, there's the potential for this to be a really, really special guy. Final question to all of you. We're going to try and keep it brief before we wrap things up, and then we'll do predictions for the Everton game, which could be interesting, seeing as they could have Ancelotti at the helm by the time that we face them. But Wayne, Arteta, I'm going to just a very simple one. Do you think it'll be success or not? And then I want a scoreline for the Everton game, please, mate.
100%. I think it'll be a success. Great feeling about it. But I think the Everton match, if we can get him in, yeah, we might get the bounce factor for once in our life. We could get in and get a result then. I would like to see him get off to a good start. Nice 2-0 win, clean sheet, give him something to work on.
Imagine that, a clean sheet in his first game.
Be unreal, but imagine the confidence that the entire club would get from that. A clean sheet and a win. Unreal.
Yeah, 100%. Tomo.
Will Xhaka be back? How long is he out for?
He's only had one game.
I can't even believe I'm looking forward to Xhaka coming back for us to get a result. It's this is how low we've come. I think we're in a rut, so I'm going to go for a draw. I don't see. Obviously, if Arteta comes in before the game, that would be great. But we've got issues. So for me, I'd just like for us to just keep it tight. I'd like to see, the two guys in midfield, preferably Xhaka and Torreira, or Luiz in midfield. I think actually we missed that a lot against City. Because when you don't have Luiz or Xhaka, no one can play that long raking ball. And to kind of set our speedsters on, getting on their bike and running down the wings or, through the channels. We really missed that pass. When Xhaka or Luiz are not playing and we don't have that out ball, I just don't, and we've got no intricacy in our play through the middle whatsoever. It doesn't matter who you put in the middle. We just can't put 3, 4, 5 passes together through the middle. So often we do need that quick ball out. And so I'm hoping that one of those guys can come back into the team. I'm a big advocate of Luiz in the middle. I seem to be, maybe alone in thinking that. But if any of those guys get a start, then I do think we've maybe got a chance to try and score some goals. If neither of those guys,
Xhaka that we got against West Ham, that's for sure. That guy couldn't pass the ball 5 yards. Yeah,
but if neither of those guys are playing, I just don't see how we score goals really, because we just don't move the ball quickly enough through the middle or with the long ball. So I'll be quietly optimistic and go for a draw, say a 1-1.
Fair enough. I think you raised a couple of good points there. I think it's very fashionable to bash Luiz and Xhaka, and for good reason sometimes, but the fact that we do lack that long ball and that out ball is a very key thing. I mean, it's a shame that those attributes are attached to players which are so faulted in other areas, but we do lack them 100%. French.
I feel like whenever they try that long ball though with Luiz, I felt like 90 minutes of him just not actually finding anyone with it. I know it does work in some games, but it's just so frustrating when you look at Jorginho finding people on a dime, and our guys are continuously lobbing them over, and sorry.
Right, that's fine. I mean, it is frustrating. I just think that sometimes we make so many silly errors in positions where if we were a bit more accurate with a lofted pass, it would get us out of trouble and possibly on.
David Luiz seems to rifle them from midway into his half, and it's like no backspin on it, not just like a bull toe straight through. Nobody can get them. They just go out and play. Like, just like, what's the point? Like,
so prediction, French.
And on Arteta's success as well. I think my head is definitely with like the kind of it's an unknown, but I want to go with resounding success, challenging within 5 years. I just feel like young players, I do think that's an important thing. I think if we get the right kind of philosophy, direction, and he manages people like Martinelli, people like Pepe, get rid of people who don't want to be here. If you're over 25, you don't want to be here, you can go. We have some value in some players. Ozil. And even
sorry, I just had to cough there.
100%. And even players like Aubameyang, he doesn't want to extend his contract. He's getting to that age. He's got value. We have to cut off emotion at a certain point and say if we're going to be in it for the long term, we have to make some tough decisions. And I think Martinelli's a promising prospect. And if we get more people around him and we have a good system, then we have to do what we can do to fund a solid investment in the future. I think he will be a success, and I think he'll be able to develop those young players. So, and in terms of assuming that he does come in, I think we get that bounce. And I think that Everton team, they've had some magic going on with Ferguson, but that's going to die out. And I think especially if Ancelotti comes in, things will come back to reality. We forget they are our B team essentially. They've got all our old players. So subbing off Moise Kean, like after putting him on for a few minutes, I don't know. It's all a bit of a. I think it's going to kind of fall flat on its face against us. Just the magic can't last forever, and they're not actually as bad as they've been, but they're not as good as they've been recently either. So, yeah, I think we'll do them 3-1 if we have Arteta.
Interesting. Yeah, if we get Arteta in, I think that we will see Arteta on the touchline before that Everton game. I don't think that we will see an initial bounce. Personally, I agree with Tom. I think it's going to be more of a cagey sort of draw. I think that both teams are going to concede. With the way that we're playing, I was sort of left into this as we started off the show by saying I was in a full sense of security with the City game, and I don't want to make that same mistake again. And so that's why I'm personally thinking that we aren't going to grab the win. I pray you're right, French. I really, really do. And I pray Wayne as well. I mean, a clean sheet. Well, people in the comments are asking what a clean sheet is because they haven't seen one for so long. I think it's a really odd game because of the
I'm lethal at the predictions this year, Tom.
Yeah, well, people won't put their predictions in, so we never actually got to carry that on. Maybe we could start.
Well, I was steamrolling that league. I was, know it.
Yeah, you and Ola were taking it away at times. But no, that's going to round us off. I think that we've covered everything as we can. I think there's been plenty of controversial things said today, which not everyone's going to be with, and that's fine because that's just what we're here for, to put our opinions across and get the debate started. So let us know in the comments about what you think of Arteta as a possible Arsenal manager moving forwards. But until then, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you to French. First of all, mate, pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom. It was great to get that off my chest.
Yeah, no, that's what it's here for, mate. That's what you are here for, to voice those frustrations. Wayne does a great job at that, as always. Cheers, fella.
Yeah, man.
Is that it?
That's it. It's all good. I speak enough, Tom.
And Tomo, always a pleasure to have you back on the second show, and I'm sure for many more in the future, mate.
Yeah, cheers for having me. And hopefully we've got a new coach and some other coaches, so we don't have our doctor and the bin man and the tea lady, lacing up the boots next week. So come on, Arsenal, sort it out. Can we get back to winning ways, please?
Great to chat with the two lads tonight. It was actually really good to listen to some of the things they had to say. It was really good. Well done, lads.
Cannot disagree with that whatsoever. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, everyone. We will see you again very soon. I should hopefully have a video out for you this week at some point with Sam Lee from The Athletic, who is the Manchester City correspondent, and he's going to be giving his thoughts on Mikel Arteta and what he thinks about the impact and probably more of an insight. And we get to find out some of the things which have actually been going on at the Etihad Stadium with Arteta there. So that should be good.
Excellent stuff, Tom.
Yeah, should be interesting. Please make sure you like the video if you've enjoyed things, and you subscribe to the channel if you're new, and turn those notifications on to make sure that you never miss a show. But until then, we will see you again very soon, and try, as always, to keep saying up the Arsenal.